In this video, we'll show how to mix these two light-sensitive chemical solutions together in order to brush it on paper that we will make a cyanotype on. Solution A is ferric ammonium citrate dissolved in water. Solution B is potassium ferricyanide dissolved in water. We need equal parts of each, so we'll use 1 ounce of each. 1 ounce is 30 milliliters. So the markings on this mixing and measuring beaker go 20, there's a line, 40, there's a line. There's not enough room to mark all the measurements, so the unmarked lines are the odd numbers, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60. If we pour in 30 mils of ferric ammonium citrate, we'll do that first. Okay, always put the caps back on so that you don't spill it or get the wrong cap on the wrong bottle. Now when we add the 30 mils of solution B, 30 and 30 are 60, we'll be pouring it in until we get 60 mils. There, that's our solution. It's 2 ounces of solution. We should be able to coat a good amount of paper with that. Just give it a little swirl. They mix very readily together. This is a little small to dip a brush in, so I'm just going to transfer that into a container that's easy to put a brush in. We're done. We're ready to coat paper. Oh, one other thing about this chemistry. The reason we mix these two together before we coat the paper, instead of having done it some other time, is because when they're kept separately, these two solutions will keep indefinitely in a brown glass bottle. Once you mix them together, it has a short working time of a couple hours, maybe even 3 hours, and it begins to deteriorate and it will no longer work. This is a video of how to coat paper with the light-sensitive cyanotype chemistry in order to make a cyanotype print. Just about any paper will work. This is from the art store. Mixed media means you can use watercolor paint, tempera paint, pencil, charcoal, what have you. And it's a fairly thick paper, works well. We are going to use this paper from the art store, watercolor paper. It's a little smaller, it's easy, we don't have to cut anything up to use it, and I like it because it's a nice heavy paper. So today we're using this watercolor paper, but you could also use fabric. You could coat a handkerchief, a bandana, a t-shirt, canvas, and washing it is a little trickier. Now you can use any type of brush that you want. This brush is a little small to cover this whole area. It might work well if you're using a smaller piece of paper. But for the larger piece of paper, one of these larger brushes, I prefer this size. These are the same. Either works well. I think the foam is a little easier to use. So we just start brushing this on. And I'm working quickly because this is sensitive to sunlight. It's sensitive to the ultraviolet portion of the sunlight, which is invisible. We can't see ultraviolet. Ultraviolet will give us a suntan, a sunburn. Okay, this is very evenly coated. It's ready to go. We're going to put it in the dark to dry. So Here's another piece of paper we'll try in a different way. This paper has a very smooth side and one side that's rougher. You can use either side with possibly different results. To dry it, the last piece of paper I removed it to the dark to dry. All you need to do is set it on some paper towels and put it in a dark space like a closet. Just set it in there and it will dry by the end of the day. Okay, so this time, just to see if we can get a different effect, I'm going to use this brush here. And so it's not so saturated, I'm going to do the edges in order to get some brush marks. You can see those brush marks on the edges. Then I'm going to go back in the center and make sure that we've got plenty of solution in the center. So having these brush marks show is an artistic effect that sometimes looks good. So the subject matter will go in the middle and the edges then will show the brush marks. I'm going to set this one to dry. We are going to try double coating some paper. Now the sensitivity of the cyanotype chemistry is low. So when you expose it, when you make your exposure by setting it in the sun with an object on top, which could be a stencil, a leaf, a negative, it's going to take probably at least 3 minutes on a bright sunny day, and depending on what your object is, it could take 5 minutes, 10 minutes. Some people on cloudy days have exposed for a couple of hours, so it's slow. Whereas if you have a film camera, your exposure is a fraction of a second, because that's a silver-based chemistry instead of iron. So with silver-based chemistry, we can't open the box in this type of light. It would immediately expose the whole thing. It would be no good. So here is a piece of paper that we coated a couple days ago with a slightly different chemistry. It was it was the same chemicals but a different version. Okay, I'm going to mark this on the back that we double coated this piece of paper. Otherwise, when everything is dry, you may not be able to tell them apart. The other ones that are not marked, we just coated once. So this already has the solution spread on it and it's dry. Okay, I said this was a slightly different solution. It was made with a brown ferric ammonium sulfate or citrate instead of green. The results are really, as far as I can tell, much the same. So we are, although people will say use the green, I've made a lot of cyanotypes with the brown. We are recoating this to provide a thicker layer of the chemistry, and the experiment is, will this have a different look when we make an exposure on it? So that's an experiment. I'm going to put this in the dark. I'll coat one more sheet of paper. This is the same process used to make blueprints that now they're pretty much replaced by digital architectural drawings. I'm sure they're still in use, but for 150 years or something, all the plans for building buildings were done from blueprints. They're blue with white lines on them. That is the same process. This coating's a little bit uneven. I am going to leave it that way. It's thicker here, not so thick here, just because it will make a subtle variation in your final print. And since we're experimenting, there's a lot of unknown factors that can affect the final print you make, which are unexpected surprises. If you make a lot of cyanotypes and you make them in different ways, you'll start to be able to predict what something is going to look like, and that will influence the way you go through the entire process. Part of the fun is there's always a surprise. You're never really certain how something will look in the end.